This is KCCK's Culture Crawl. I'm Dennis Green, and my guest today is Don Stelkin. Don is with the Arthur A. Collins Legacy Association, which is a group made up primarily, but not completely, of retirees of what was first Collins Radio and is now Collins Aeronautics. So first off, welcome, Don.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Good to be here.
And the reason why we're talking today is because the second in what is projected to be three documentaries on the role that Collins had on the U.S. space program is just about ready to be released. The first one was called Moon Talk, right?
That's correct.
And that was about Apollo 8, which was kind of the first. Not the first, because the company had that contract for quite a while, but the first that really caught the public's imagination and that a lot of footage exists of.
Yeah, and that was the first mission to the moon. They didn't land on the moon, but they orbited the moon. So it was a big test for all of the Apollo equipment, including the Collins gear.
For those who don't know, it was Collins that did all of the radio communications for the entire Apollo program.
That's correct. And what a lot of people don't realize is that we did both ends of the communication. The Cedar Rapids based operations did the equipment on the command module and one piece of equipment out of the lunar lander module. But we also, our Dallas division, specifically Richardson, Texas, did the ground tracking network. So that was a major accomplishment in its own right too. So the company really had a big stake in the Apollo missions.
So everything that people heard those 50 years ago, from the voices on the ground to Neil Armstrong's first words, came across on Collins equipment.
Somehow or other it did. There were obviously, Apollo is very complex, and there were other contractors engaged but we can honestly say that the voice of every American astronaut, from the Mercury, Gemini, and all the way through the last Apollo flight, Apollo Soyuz, and the Skylab, some way or another, it found its way through Collins equipment.
So the second documentary in the series is called Live from the Moon, and it's going to have a premiere in a couple of weeks. And this is about Apollo 11 and Collins Radio.
Yeah, it is, and it's more than that. We actually cover. Well, we cover a little bit of ground from the previous film in case people didn't get to see it all or absorb it all. But then it goes through Apollo 11. It also goes through Apollo 13, and it goes through the end of the Apollo program, and it kind of wraps it all up through the whole Apollo program then to the end of the Apollo program.
And for the premiere of the movie, you have chosen a rather important date in space history. That's
correct. It was 50 years ago on July 20th that the Neil Armstrong stepped foot on the moon, and so it's something that everyone should be excited about. Just the achievement of Apollo, which was the greatest achievement of humankind, the way I look at it. And even if we hadn't been involved, it's still worth celebrating. But the fact that Collins and Cedar Rapids had so much to do with it makes it even that much more worth celebrating.
The documentary will premiere on July 20th.
That's correct.
And you got one show only at the Collins Theater in Cedar Rapids.
That's right. Collins Road Theaters. And we would like to thank the theater. They've been most gracious in hosting our films. And we also like to thank KCCK for promoting it, because we certainly had an overflow crowd the first time, and it's due to promotions such as this that helped spread the word.
Well, it's so exciting to see this story told. You know, you live in Cedar Rapids, you bump into people from Collins, and every now and again, back in the day, I worked, or my dad worked on the radio program for the space program. But to see everything collected and get to have the story set up for everybody to see. Now, I understand, too, that for those who have heard about or seen the other recent documentary, Apollo 11, which was all brand new footage from the Apollo 11 mission that had never really been seen before, some of your footage comes from those same sources.
That's correct. There are some public domain sources for some of the footage. We also have what we have that is unique from everybody else is that we have a lot of 16 millimeter films from the company that document all this stuff, and the company has been gracious in digitizing them all, so they're all kind of in high definition, and so there truly is a lot of unique footage that absolutely nobody, including NASA, do not have.
That hasn't seen the light of day in 50 years.
That's correct.
Everything now, in the press release that goes along with this, they talk specifically about some test films and things like that the company made to try and figure out how transmission from the moon was going to work. Do you actually have films that came from the transmissions from the moon too?
Yeah, I'm not sure that those films are all unique to Collins.
Sure,
but
sure. But there's some.
Yeah, and the films that we do have, are they were very professional done because they were part of the company's public relations efforts at the time, and so they're just wonderful quality, and there's nothing like it. You won't see it anyplace else.
As you were watching the documentary come together, and I don't know exactly what your role is, but I'm sure that there were little pieces and stories and clips and things that were shown to your association. Anything that surprised you? Anything that you didn't know, or that just really kind of knocked you for a loop?
Well, let me think. Yes. One of the things that the films did was to help clarify and correct maybe some folklore. There's always been a buzz within the plant that it was Collins who convinced NASA to put television on the Apollo missions because NASA was originally against it. And then because they were pragmatic and they didn't want to compromise the mission anyway with stuff people didn't really need to do. But then when the public relations value was made known, then they were worried about it taking too much bandwidth.
So some problems are the same from 50 years ago to now.
So what we found in the film archives were documentation of of a study contract that NASA gave us to study television. So there's all this footage of doing the television work, and then we found another audio tape of a guy describing it, and we put it together, and it's very convincing that Collins really did have a lot to do with there being television from the moon.
So not only do we have Collins to thank for the transmissions, but we also have Collins to thank for the idea.
Yeah, and the television.
And the actual pictures. Yeah. Imagine how different the experience would have been had we not been able to watch it on television.
That certainly would have been different in my situation, because I remember that very well.
So the premiere of Live from the Moon is on Saturday, July 20th, the 50th anniversary of the moon landing at the Collins Road Theater in Cedar Rapids. And what time of day is it?
It's the doors open at 9:30 and the showing is at 10:30. And we would encourage everyone to be there early because last time we actually had to turn some people away. So. And we don't want anybody to miss it.
No. And I understand that, and I don't understand because I actually have one, that the first documentary in this series, Moon Talk, is now out as a DVD. So if you weren't able to see it in the theater, you can now get it as a DVD. But we were talking before we started, the experience of seeing this on the big screen, it's really the way to go.
That's right. And we will actually have DVDs for sale at the premiere so that if you want to see it again, you just go home and watch it again. But the theater experience is something really special.
Well, I know I want it in my personal collection. Definitely.
And especially when you're dealing with space topics and big rocket topics, you got to see it on the big screen.
Absolutely. Well, I know there's some other showings. You're going to be in Des Moines and got a couple other opportunities as well. And if people want to find out what those are, they can visit your website, I
That's
imagine,
right.
yes? And the website is?
It's
I have it. It's arthurcollins.org
Yep.
for the Arthur A. Collins Legacy Association. Well, Don, thanks so much for being here. It's pretty obvious to anybody listening or watching right now, I've always been a space nut. And so getting to hear this story and being able to live in a place that was so important to the success of the space program and hear this story told is just great. So thanks to you and the entire association for getting the story out there.
Yeah, well, and thank you for helping us get the story out there and promoting our shows. That's very important to us.
Great. Thanks for being here, Don.
You bet.
Again, it's Live from the Moon, July 20th at the Collins Road Theaters. Doors open at 9:30. 10:30 is the show. Get there early because we expect it will fill up. And if you'd like more information, arthurcollins.org. You can hear the Culture Crawl most Thursday and Friday mornings at 10:20 on the radio, or download the podcast, watch or listen on your own schedule using your favorite podcast app or at kcck.org/culture. I'm Dennis Green.